Hey gang, I'm Luke and welcome to Down from the Attic. Quick heads up, this is going to be a long review because there's so much to cover with this game. You know which game I'm looking at, you saw the picture at the start of this review. This episode I'm looking at Return to Dark Tower from Restoration Games. Let's get this beast of a game down and have a look at it.
If you're not familiar with Dark Tower, check out my previous review of the vintage Dark Tower from Milton Bradley. Despite it being a great game and an incredible technical achievement for its time, theft of intellectual rights meant a ban of future sales, and even copies being pulled off the shelves in the 80s. This has led to vintage copies of this to go for a very, very hefty price. Despite all this, Dark Tower was a brilliant game, and has become one of those classic vintage games that many regard as a holy grail, loved by a small few who had the game from childhood, and by vintage gamers who appreciate its inventiveness.
In comes Restoration Games 40 years later, not only with the proposal to bring back Dark Tower, but to update it mechanically and technically for modern audiences, and this was no mean feat. Restoration went through nearly 30 different iterations of the tower to get it to this point, but here we are. So, without further ado...
First off, box art. And whew, this box is enormous. The artwork, however, stunning. This font evokes the old art style. The gold foil really pops and makes this leap off the shelf. The rear of the box has artwork of our 4 heroes, where the front has some of our villains. This looks premium and definitely has shelf presence. Contents! And Restoration have learned their lesson with Fireball Island. Expensive, difficult to replace game pieces need protecting, and they designed this box very well. Look at all this embossed detail on the game's packaging. Not needed, but it adds to the theme. The box insert also safely holds and cradles the all-important tower. And it also acts as a draw tray for the monster tokens. This has been given some thought. So, what do we have here? 4 heroes, 4 character sheets, 4 villages, 4 bazaars, 4 citadels, 4 sanctuaries, a bunch of these plastic skulls, the barter dice, enemy tiles, enemy stats cards, treasure cards, companion cards, corruption cards, potion cards, gear cards, quest item cards, competitive goal cards, spore tokens, tree tokens, virtue tokens, rivers of fire tokens, dungeon tokens, quest markers, men tokens, spirit tokens, this enormous and beautiful board, and this, the tower, and god damn, this thing is freaking huge. This is easily the largest singular game component I've ever seen, and it's absolutely spectacular. But that's not all you're going to need to be able to play this game. You're also going to need a phone or a tablet to install the app. Yes, this game has an app that communicates with the tower, and I would also strongly recommend picking up one of these. A Lazy Susan. Because the tower's so big, it's pretty useful to be able to spin the board round to where you are on the board. So, without further ado, let's move on to Setup. Fold out the board, add the villages, sanctuaries, bazaars and citadels onto the board. Shuffle the treasures and turn over the top 3. These will represent the marketplace, the treasures available for you to buy. The gear cards are separated into their 6 different types and laid face up. Shuffle the potions deck and the corruptions deck and set to one side. Put the men tokens, the spirit tokens and the skulls into little pots in easy access of all players. Set the quest item cards and the companion cards to one side, as well as the dungeon tiles and the quest markers. The plague and rivers of flame tokens are specific to one particular foe, so these can stay in the box unless you need them. Everyone selects a hero, takes their hero character sheet and their 4 virtue tokens. You place these tokens with the chain side up. These are locked off to start with and will need to be unlocked whilst playing. Each hero is placed in their kingdom on their citadel. Every hero starts with 7 men and 1 spirit. And done? Well, no, not quite, because we still need to tell the tower what quest we're going to be playing. Switch the tower on and connect to it via Bluetooth using the app. The app is the real brain of the tower. It's going to be acting as the dungeon master and will control the tower and its monsters. Select a level 5 foe. This will be your main adversary and who you'll need to vanquish in order to be victorious. You'll also need to select a level 2 foe, a level 3 and a level 4. These are going to be that villain's henchmen. Then, select a quest, and these can be quite varied, such as assembling an army, destroying evil relics, preventing an incoming plague. Then, you take the corresponding enemy tokens out of the box and that enemy's stats cards. The app will tell you where to place some of your foes on the board. I particularly love the fact that it shows you where on the screen. This is very helpful. With the foes on the board and the quest selected, we are done.
Presentation? I am struggling where to start with this. This is stunning. Absolutely stunning to behold.
The miniatures are of an extremely high quality and a huge step up from the miniatures in Fireball Island. The miniatures came with this dark wash already applied to them, as you can see in the instruction booklet, which looks superb and perfectly serviceable, but as you can see, I've painted these up, along with the buildings. The art style throughout the entire board, the cards, the character sheets is thematic and cohesive. Everything feels as if it's from this world. The skulls, they're of different shapes, some with jaws and some without. It's little details like this that aren't needed but much welcomed. Then, there's the tower. It glows sinisterly throughout the game. With its inbuilt speaker, it laughs, it taunts, monsters howl and shriek out of it. The LEDs used are bright, and I've had no issue playing this game in daylight. In a dimly lit room, however, this thing is a centerpiece. And then there's the app. It's simple to use, the art style carries over, and something that adds even more theme to this game has an orchestral score. No, I'm not joking. It has a score and it's contextual. A month starts, violins screech with a ticking clock sound. Battling a monster, it's epic, tense battle music. There's a heroic trumpets when you defeat a foe. War drums when you complete a side quest. This is unlike anything I've ever played before. There's nothing I can compare it to. Restoration clearly pulled out the stops for this, and my goodness does it show. For many generations, the tower has remained silent, dormant, the four kingdoms living in peace and harmony after the legendary heroes of the lands bested the tower decades prior. However, the tower has awoken from its slumber, and with it, a deluge of evil has spread across the land once more. Foul beasts and monsters stalk the kingdoms, corruption and pestilence spread the lands again. Our heroes must spring to action and join forces to save their homes and defeat the tower. But will they be victorious?
Aforementioned, before you can begin playing, you need to select your quest from the app, and also the monsters that you're going to be battling against.
Quests can have you assembling an army of 100 men, encircling the tower with a forest of trees, destroying evil relics. These are all quite varied, as to be expected, some far more difficult than others. The villains and monsters are likewise a varied and macabre and motley crew. Wolves, brigands, titans, the clan of Nurit, each with their own attacks and attributes. And sounds. Yes, each monster has its own battle cry that howls from the tower when you battle it. This is impressive detail. Certain monsters have effects on the board too, such as the Ash Strider setting rivers ablaze, the Lingering Rock casting pestilence on people. It's all quite thematic. By combining different quests with different monsters, conceivably, you have hundreds of thousands of conceivable quests. The replay value here is off the charts. At the side of each monster token and on the stats card for each monster, you'll see each monster's attributes: beast, undead, magic, humanoid, stealth. These are all things to think very, very carefully about when selecting your heroes, because if your stats are for magic and you're up against non-magic foes, well, you're going to need a lot of magic items and wild advantages to give you a fighting chance against them. but this can also make it a much more interesting game for those who want a challenge. The app will tell you where these land on the board, and it will tell you to add 2 skulls to 2 buildings in all kingdoms. Yeah, that's right, the evil influence of the tower is right there from the get-go. So, our heroes. The brutal warlord is like your barbarian class. He excels in fighting and gains men tokens quickly. The orphan Skion is your mage class. Her skill is in magic. The spy master is your thief class. Stealth is her ally. And the relic hunter, he's a swashbuckling Indiana Jones style knight, and he excels at fighting humanoid foes. Each have their strengths and weaknesses, and it's key to victory to know how to use each effectively.
Return to Dark Tower is a cooperative game. You'll need to work together in order to beat this thing. You'll have to prioritise tasks and quests to certain players, share resources between you, also prioritise what events you're dealing with at that moment, and also battle foes to help out your other players. It's basically putting out fires as they show up. There's quite a lot to manage and keep track of in this game, but I'll do my best to try and explain it to you.
At the start of a month, the app will tell you about 3 active quests: your main quest, a monthly side quest, and the monthly adversary quest. The app will tell you what you need to accomplish and where on the map to head to do these. These quest tracking markers should be added to the board to show their locations. In a turn, you get 3 actions. Looking at your character sheet, you can see the flow of a turn. First, your banner action, and these are different between all characters. Like a special ability of sorts, you get to do these on every turn. These can be recruiting men, gaining spirit, moving within a kingdom. These are all very useful and require a bit of thinking to make tactical use of them.
Next is your heroic action, your main action, and you can do one of 3 things. 1, you can choose to battle a foe. 2, you can opt to do a quest. Or 3, you can clean skulls off a building. But you can only do one of these things.
We'll start with skulls first. Skulls in this game represent the evil and malice the tower is spewing forth onto the lands. The more skulls on a building, the worse the corruption. A building can only ever hold 3 skulls maximum. Should a 4th land on a building, it's destroyed, removed from the game, and all the skulls with it, meaning less skulls in the draw pile. And if this happens to be a building in your home kingdom, you gain a corruption card. These have negative effects on players, so it's really imperative that you work together to keep removing skulls off the buildings to protect them. Removed skulls are returned to the draw pile. Should this draw pile ever run empty, game over. So cleansing kingdoms of skulls is important. You can also opt to resolve a quest. Again, you need to be on the same square as a quest marker in order to do this. Quests can be sacrificing items you've collected, having so many virtues unlocked, having so many men accrued, so it's wise to remind yourself of the objectives before tackling one, and you can do this on the app. On the app, you select the quest. If you've beaten the requirements, boom, you've completed the quest. Most quests have a reward for completion. Monthly quests usually give you a companion that will grant you special abilities, or a quest item that will aid you. More on both of these soon. A quest can also take the form of a dungeon. These are procedurally added by the app at the start of a month, and even cooler, the dungeon itself is procedurally generated. You choose the direction you wish to head to your objective, and you have to resolve the actions in each room, losing men, losing spirits, adding skulls to the tower. Find your way through the dungeon and you get a reward. Dungeons, much like the foes, have stats too, the same stats found on monster tokens, so again, a magic dungeon requires magic. So if you haven't got any magic, or if you've got stealthy attributes, it's going to be a rough time for you. The monthly enemy quest is worth delegating and tackling, because if you don't do this, your main adversary grows stronger, its influence wider, and negative attributes will be applied should you fail to resolve the quest. Too many of these, and you'll really struggle to beat the tower. The last main action you can do is battling. Again, you'll need to be on the same square as a monster you wish to fight. How this works is quite simple and quite fun. Press the sword button on the app. It will then ask you to select which monster type you wish to fight against. From there, you need to select its attack cards. These are randomised each battle, which is great for keeping you on your toes. Remember when we set up the game selecting a level 2, level 3, level 4 and level 5 enemy? Well, this tells you how many battle cards you'll be selecting for each battle. A level 2 foe has 2 cards, a level 5 foe has 5 cards. Each foe has a state of readiness. This tells you how savage their attack is going to be and how many attributes it will take to lessen their attacks. So with the card selected, the battle begins. Similar to dungeon rooms, you'll have to resolve the attacks. This is losing men or spirits, losing equipment, adding skulls to towers or buildings. And if you can't resolve it, gaining a corruption. You can lessen the effect of an attack by using your attributes. For example, fighting brigands, I can use any humanoid attribute against it to weaken its attack by tapping this up arrow. You spend items and skills to lessen the attack, in some cases actually resulting in rewards. When you resolve the last battle card, the foe is defeated and you remove the token off the board. For successfully completing your action on your turn, battling, cleansing or questing, you gain 2 spirit. So, trying to do what you can to help on your turn helps you level up and gain useful spirit tokens. But what do they actually do?
Well, this comes into the final part of your turn, reinforcing.
There's 4 different types of building in the game: citadels, sanctuaries, bazaars and villages. Reinforcing at one of them gives you upgrades to your character, so reinforcing is almost essential to do. There's 2 reinforce options for each building, one for free and one that's going to cost you spirit tokens. Citadels, your free action is to gain a potion. Potions can be used at any time in your turns. These can have a wide array of effects, such as not gaining damage on a particular battle card, granting you wild advantages, removing corruption, so really handy to have these. Spending 5 spirit tokens at a citadel allows you to unlock one of your character's virtues. Basically, their special abilities. They stay with you the whole game and are definitely worth investing in. Villages are where you recruit men, these tokens here. Your free action is to gain 6 men, but pay 1 spirit and you double that to 12. Men tokens and spirit tokens are like the currency of this game. You'll be using men and spirit tokens to complete quests and battle monsters, so having more of each increases your chances of success. The bazaar is where you'll get useful items from. For free you can gain a piece of gear. Gear can increase your magic abilities, increase your move distance for each turn, increase your stealth. Spend spirit tokens and you can gain a treasure from the marketplace. You can only hold up to 4 treasures at a time, but some of these are immensely useful and have some effects that can last the whole game. In particular, I love the magic carpet that allows me to move to any space on the board, immeasurably useful for quests. Gear and treasures have either a grey or a black banner to them. Grey means that it's single use, you use it and you dispose of it. Black means that you can reuse this item over and over again. Knowing when and where to use those single use items can truly change the tide of a game. Finally, there's sanctuaries. Here, you can gain 1 spirit as your free action, or spend spirit to cleanse yourself of corruptions. And this is something you'll be doing quite a bit. Here's where the barter dice comes into play. Totally optional to use, this dice can allow you to gain additional men, a free piece of gear, or a free potion. But it's the risk of the deal going through as normal, which is fine, or no deal, which means there's no reinforced action for you. You've wasted your spirit, time and movement. It's a bit of a gamble, but it's great when it pays off.
So that's your turn. banner action, main heroic action, and reinforcing. You can also move up to 3 spaces on your turn, though you can pay 1 spirit token to double this to 6.
At the end of your turn, you drop a skull into the tower. In between player turns, the tower takes its turn, and this thing can be really rotten to you at times. There's a sensor in the top of the tower that recognises when a skull has been dropped. With that, the app will tell you of any events that are about to happen. The tower may tell you that a seal is broken. It will howl and flash which seal you have to remove. Sometimes you'll get lucky to reveal a wall there. Other times, it will send a cascade of skulls raining down on your kingdom, skulls that you have to place on your buildings. Because all those skulls that get dropped in turn after turn, they accumulate inside the tower. The tower may also choose to rotate itself. There's 3 drums behind all the seal walls, and these can and will rotate. So what was an empty wall has just opened up and dumped a load of skulls out. Skulls have to be assigned to buildings, so you'll try to evenly spread how many on each building. After all, you don't want them destroyed and to gain corruptions. The tower can also illuminate glyphs on it, and these have negative effects on the players. If a glyph is illuminated on the side facing your kingdom, it acts almost like a curse. These glyphs all relate to parts of a player's turn: banner action, action, quest, reinforce. If one of these is lit, it's going to cost you spirit every time you make that certain action. Your only option is to hope that the drums rotate again and it moves off, or certain actions allow you to add a door back to the tower, blocking up the glyph and breaking the curse.
The tower is quite clever, you see. It learns what you're doing, it knows where you've been, how far along the main quest you are, what items you got, what companions you got, and if you've been defeating foes with ease, it'll up their readiness to make them far more difficult to battle. And it may even opt to drop on the board higher level monsters, making it far more difficult. I've been in the middle of a quest and thinking I'm doing really well for the tower to scupper my plans in a single stroke.
It truly feels like a vindictive, villainous foe you're working against, and I love it. The fact that it laughs and taunts you when you've messed up just makes you want to defeat it even more. You see, as you level up through the months, gain more gear, more treasures, more men, more spirit, and build up your character, the tower does the same. It's pretty fantastic at matching your progression so that it continues to feel like a challenge throughout the game. I've mentioned a few times now about corruptions, but what are they? Corruptions are these cards here, negative effects that hinder players. You gain corruptions every time you fail a battle card with a monster when you can't resolve what it's asking. Need to lose 20 men to defeat an enemy, but only have 18? Gain a corruption. In a dungeon and need to spend spirit, but have none? Corruption town for you. Some of these corruptions are absolute stinkers and can really throw a wrench in the works with your plans. You also gain corruptions when any building in your kingdom is destroyed by having too many skulls on it. Cleansing yourself of corruptions is massively important because you can only ever hold 2 corruptions. Should you gain a third? Game over. And not just for you, for everyone. Quest failed. So keeping yourself free of corruptions should be a high priority. So how do you negate the attacks of enemies or increase your chances in dungeons? Well, having a lot of men and spirit will help, but you'll soon chomp through those. What really can help is your virtues, abilities, potions, items, and companions. Virtues generally give you special attributes that will help you and your fellow heroes. Certain heroes get advantages when they land on certain terrain spaces. Potions can be taken to negate damage or restore men and spirits. Items have advantages against certain foes, so a magic item can be used against a magic foe, a stealth item against a stealth foe, and so on. Companions gained from completing quests can give you advantages periodically throughout the month. There's companions that grant you free treasures, free men, free spirits. How these are utilised is relatively simple. When in battle, the effect of a certain card shows the damage you will take from that attack card. Under it, a little arrow allows you to apply one of your advantages to lessen the effectiveness of an attack. And you can apply multiple advantages in battle, really weakening your enemies, and sometimes to the point where they actually drop loot. So acquiring useful loot, companions, and levelling up your character is worth investing in. You can also share resources with your fellow heroes, provided you're on the same square. Again, allocating weapons, treasures, and potions to those whose advantages and skills make the best use of them is something you'll have to work together to figure out.
Return to Dark Tower is as much about planning your attacks, strategizing your moves, managing your resources, and knowing where your strengths and weaknesses lie, as it is battling monsters and doing quests. But you've also got to take into account cleaning those skulls off the buildings. You've got to take care of that, but doing so leaves monsters on the board. Monsters that are going to attack at any time. You've also got to get more men, more spirit, more gear, more treasure, companions. It can at points feel like, am I focused on the right thing here? And admittedly, sometimes you're not. Sometimes you're doing the complete wrong thing. But those things will help you out eventually. Getting more gear, getting more men, yeah, it's going to help down the line, even if it doesn't feel like it at the immediate moment.
The game is also about time management too. Months typically last for around 9 turns, so you know from the start of a month you have 9 turns to beat a quest. It leads to you and the other players discussing turn by turn what to do next. There's a brilliant sense of cooperation to this game. And whilst you're managing all this, plotting out the various fires on the board, running around to solve quests, clear skulls, get gear, monsters will be added to the board and their readiness increased. But what are they actually doing, I hear you ask? What threat do they pose? Well, on the tower's turn, the tower may opt to mobilise an enemy type to attack. And the more on the board, the more savage and devastating the attack. Lower level monsters tend to attack you far less frequently, but their numbers can certainly overwhelm. Level 4 and 5, your main villain, well, they will attack with much more rapidity. Enemies can add skulls to buildings, straight up destroy buildings, raise to and attack heroes, diminish spirit and men. All their attacks are designed to undo all the work you've done levelling up, all the progression you've made. The main quest carries over from month to month. There's no penalty for not resolving that each month, but it has to be resolved by the end of month 6, otherwise failure. When the conditions for the quest have been met, the main adversary is spawned onto the board, and at this point, you had better be ready for battle, because this guy can deliver a lot of damage. You'll need all the men, spirit, potions and treasure you can carry, because certain attacks can wipe out 40 men alone. Beat all 5 cards on the main adversary, and you are victorious! You have beaten the tower!
But we're not over with this review yet. Oh no, because this game is one of the few board games that I've got that has a solid, well thought out single player experience. Yes, you can play Return to Dark Tower single player. Now, of course, you can play with all 4 characters if you wanted to, but the game actually allows for one character, one player, and it will pare down the difficulty. It'll make it a little easier for you, but it's a fantastic experience and also gives you the chance to try out each of the heroes and get used to their specific skills and abilities. It's a great way of practicing as well for those cooperative multiplayer games. You'll know which one suits you best.
And honestly, this game is a blast playing solo. Because the tower acts as an adversary, it still feels like a versus experience. It feels like you're playing against someone or something. Additionally, there is a competitive mode to Dark Tower, should you want to hoard the glory for yourself. Each player has to accomplish heroic tasks to gain entry into the tower and recover the artifact hidden within, all without getting eliminated. Yes, you can get eliminated from this game variant by getting 3 corruptions, and the game continues without you. This is an interesting addition to the gameplay, but admittedly, I've had more games playing this as a cooperative game. It's fantastic that Restoration chose to include this in here for those more akin to the classic game. And for those retro fans as well, Restoration also included retro mode for the tower. All retro sound effects, bleeps and bloops and music from the original tower. This is such a lovely detail.
Whew. Well, there you have it. This has been a long review. So,
final thoughts?
You've probably guessed already that I wouldn't have spent this amount of time talking about this game if I didn't like it. Return to Dark Tower is phenomenal. The experience is unlike anything else I can think of, certainly with a modern game. The presentation, the mechanics, the technology behind the tower, the miniatures, the art style, the gameplay, everything works so well here. It's all so good, and my hat goes off to Restoration. They knocked it out the park.
The game has a fantastic sense of you and your friends, your fellow warriors, against the tower. It genuinely feels like a battle of wits and skill against the thing. It becomes the 5th player in the room. With a drop of the skull after every turn, you dread how the tower is going to retaliate towards your actions. Whether it will spit skulls out all over your kingdom, flash a glyph and curse you, spawn more foes onto the board. It becomes a true enemy, and it's an absolute technological marvel. Speaking of the foes, and I'm not wanting to spoil too much of their attacks and strategies, but man, these are wide and varied. There's some surprising attacks they can do, and these can be devastating.
This is why working together and strategizing between turns is kind of key to winning this game. You'll have to delegate certain tasks to certain players. Who's going to be dealing with quests, who's getting men, spirit, weapons, dealing with the skulls on the buildings. There's an awful lot to keep track of, and you can only really do that by working together. And you'll want to do as much as you can to help your fellow players. With the game being so open, it's kind of up to you how you want to deal with those looming threats.
Games can vary in length between the 1 hour mark to 3 to 4 hours. My fastest game was 40 minutes, and believe it or not, I beat it. Bet you were thinking I messed up and died early on, didn't you?
This too is just the base game that I've covered.
There's expansion packs that I haven't got currently, but we'll be reviewing when they arrive, and I cannot wait to see what they have added to the experience of this game. Restoration have also talked about adding additional quests to the app, further expanding on the experience, which is just brilliant.
Things I don't like a few, but worth mentioning. First and most importantly, battling. For the risks involved, I don't think that you get nearly enough reward for battling monsters.
Battling a monster, you risk losing men, losing spirit, even losing equipment, and the reward? 2 spirit. I've played games where I've actively avoided encounters, skirted round foes rather than tackling them head on, because battling them is a negative to my army count and my spirit. Only when they've presented themselves as a threat, adding skulls to buildings or attacking me, is when I felt, okay, time to deal with this. The other negative to mention is that the tower absolutely annihilates batteries. It sucks them dry. And I've had games where the tower has died before finishing. Not surprising considering a Bluetooth receiver, motors, lights and sound are running constantly.
If I've not been clear enough, Return to Dark Tower is a game you simply must play. It's fantastic.
It's not a cheap game, far from it, but considering what you get inside the box and the longevity of the experience here, the combinations of quests and foes, random events, random dungeons, you'll be playing this for a very long time. No two games are ever quite the same.
I've probably played this game more than any other game this year. I cannot recommend this game enough. This is a true modern classic and contender for my game of the year. Buy Return to Dark Tower, get some friends and go defeat the tower. You're gonna absolutely love it. Well, thanks for sticking with me for this extra long review. I know it's been a long one. As always, I'm Luke. Thanks again for watching and I'll talk to you again soon.
If you like what I'm doing here on Down from the Attic, why not consider subscribing? Comments are always welcome, and I'll see you in the next video.